The lighting set up in a good way.
All right, welcome everybody. Talking Andor tonight, special nighttime, edition of the live review. We'll see how it goes.
Yep.
Show notes. Excuse my nasally voice. Still getting over a cold, maybe COVID. Who knows these days? I don't think it even matters.
I thought you're doing your best Our Lady Peace lead singer Rain impersonation.
Or British rock star.
That's it. Yeah.
Doing my Liam. I have been anticipating this conversation. I've been itching to chat with you about this because I'll just say from the get-go, this is the type of show I have been waiting for and love, and I not quite sure where you are going to land on this show.
Yeah, you and I have not talked about this.
Yeah, so I think that'll be interesting. But I'm not going to rehash, every single thing that happened for everyone. I think the plot is more or less fairly straightforward. I'm going to maybe shout out a couple cool moments I saw. I like talking about it, but then let's really dig into some of the, the bigger meat on the bones I'd like to talk about. Or,
okay.
Maybe
hold on. Ryan Johnson isn't going to come up in this, is it?
I hope not.
Okay.
Or should we do the other way around? Should I talk about plot points and Easter eggs near the end and talk about the big stuff first? Yeah. Let's flip it. Let's flip it.
Okay.
I'm just gonna ask you straight up. Does this show feel like Star Wars to you?
No. No, it does not. But that isn't necessarily a bad thing. As in all the newer Star Wars stuff, I love that they're kind of breaching away from their normal MO. I like that they're trying different formulas. It's like all the other major properties, like the Marvel properties, they're allowing the creative stretch to happen. It did not overly feel like a Star Wars any type of property until the third episode for me.
All right. So I'm going to go complete different direction. For me, this feels like Star Wars, but it feels obviously a lot of people say much different than anything that's really come out. And the way I really start thinking about it is like the Star Wars I grew up with, like say the original trilogy, the prequel trilogy, like I love that stuff, nostalgia, like I will always love it. And a lot of that stuff was maybe geared towards kids, but when you grow up with it and stuff like that, like it's still great. And don't get me wrong, like adults love Star Wars when it came out too.
Of course.
Like George Lucas has always said it was meant to be a show for children.
Mm-hmm.
This show feels like a show made for adults.
Yes, it does.
It not?
Absolutely.
And that's why me as a fan, as a grown up Star Wars fan, almost appreciates it that much more, because it's like, you know what, this isn't, your kid adventure show. Like this is a show for the kids who grew up and are adults.
There is
with Star
no
Wars.
Jar Jar Binks that's going to show up. It's
never.
It's just not happening. I agree. It feels very grown up, and maybe that's what I felt when I felt like it didn't feel like Star Wars.
Like it doesn't necessarily, like, again, it's just 3 episodes. It doesn't have that whimsical, that mythicism, that that Star Wars and action adventure thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot more grown up, darker, grittier. But for me, like it's still like I perceive Cassian Andor as a Star Wars character, right? Yep. I see Star Wars. I know there's been lots of talk how they're not slamming it full of Easter eggs and stuff like that, but I saw enough. Like there was enough Star Wars aesthetic there for me to still feel like I was in a galaxy far, far away. It was just the story we were seeing was
very un-Star Wars.
was very different. And
I loved it.
I was all for it. So speaking of some of that adult stuff, did we get potentially the first hint of like sex?
Well, there was this moment where Luke looked at Leia.
I know.
Yes, and they flat out call the fact that the guards were in a brothel. I don't think there has ever been mention of a brothel before, but having this series start on a planet where these guys are in a high-end brothel they shouldn't be in, buying drinks they can't afford, and they flat out call it that.
The opening scene. So I don't know if you've ever had the pleasure of visiting Amsterdam.
I've not.
I have. And that opening scene, when you see all the people in the windows and stuff advertising their bodies, it just reminded me of walking through the red light district.
I have heard that that's what it's like.
Yeah, so I'm like, oh wow, like we're really, we're going for it in this show. And then they
No
end up,
holding back.
yeah, and then they end up at like, basically the futuristic version of, the House of Dragon Pleasure House. Like,
Mhm.
well, it's more so bar, but
Yeah.
you know what was going on there. And yeah, and like I've been complaining about it forever. I always harp on, I don't want to keep going back to the same planets. I want new planets, and I don't want them being
Yeah. Wait.
backwater outhouses. Like, give us some civilized stuff. And we get that right away. And like I was right from the get, I was kind of hooked. Like,
Yeah, it's
in like
weird. Tatooine hasn't been visited not once.
I swear, if they end up in Tatooine. But over the 3 episodes, I thought it was a lot of great world building. Like, we get, we're on 3 different planets, and they're kind of, there's the stories kind of interconnected through them all. And I just felt like I was captivated. I was there for just learning about this new situation in the mid rim, how the corporations essentially report to the empire, but they control the one planet, they control the other. Their
Yep.
security is essentially, acting as like the current antagonist. I thought it was a completely cool, different script. And I know in future episodes, said security is not going to be able to handle what's going on. And it's going to transition to the empire, which
Yep.
is kind of like similar on how Rebels started, right? Like,
Yes,
it's
very much so, actually.
yeah, like Rebels was, it was like low level Imperials, right? Then they had to bring in, this is getting escalated to Tarkin. Then I got escalated to Vader. Then I got escalated to Thrawn. Like, it was just,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? Like, I feel like the level of danger is going to be always escalating. So I like how it started with where it was.
Yeah.
What's up, Corbin? Yeah, I know. Everything always ends up in a
Cards.
desert hellhole.
That's right. Although, in fairness, this wasn't a desert hellhole. This was the wastelands. So it was a wet hellhole, Corbin. But no, I mean, you're right. But yeah, the story took on a very adult theme, which was awesome from the word go. And there's probably going to be a few people that are going to say that it started very slowly. But to
Slow
me, this
burn is the
reminds
thing.
me,
Slow burn or boring are the 2 words I see predominantly thrown out. And I
for
think
sure.
it depends on
But
what side you land on, right?
exactly, and just for a bit of context, like this is a character that we all fell in love with during Rogue One, and now it's time to tell that story. Well, you can't go from everything that happened in Rogue One and then start off something with a bang. Like, there needs to be backstory. I love the flashbacks. You talked about how there was maybe a little too much flashback during the Book of Boba Fett. I think they're doing a
Yeah.
really good job of showing that backstory while the story is continuing.
And you know what the great thing is I think those flashbacks are probably going to end now, right? Like, they, at the very end of the episode, they did that nice little symmetry of him, of like the old lady, like a surrogate mother, essentially capturing him and raising him, at the
Yep.
same time losing him and pairing it with the shots of him leaving and and getting rescued at the same time. But he was obviously searching for a sister at the beginning. He got separated from her because she
Mhm.
stayed behind when he went to go investigate the wreckage. So yeah, like I don't know if they need to go back to those flashbacks again, like maybe for a couple little pieces.
Yeah.
Um,
And
but
that's
like,
really
and
gonna be one of those little stories that I hope they don't miss tying off. I know it's dumb and
yeah,
small and maybe it doesn't matter, but it started with him looking for somebody who he calls sister. So my
yeah.
hope is that he doesn't swan dive into what's going to be the makings of a reckoning or rebellion or resistance, and that part of it dies. I hope that that's not the case.
And the other thing I thought was interesting, since we're talking about the flashbacks, was the crash ship. I had just assumed it was like an Imperial ship, but they they say it was Republic, right? And like those were Republic guards or
They did,
whatever.
yeah,
So
it did look like a
this is,
Republic ship.
yeah. So this is kind of before, really, this is probably like before Bad Batch. Like, the flashbacks are like probably right around Revenge of the Sith timeline, maybe. I don't know what Cassian's actual age is, but it's
Yeah.
definitely when Republic is still in, which I found was interesting because that Republic guard just full on gunned down that one of his people and just
Yep.
full on murder there.
Yep.
Well, not that it was murder. I don't know what he thought. Like maybe he thought she was raided. Like
I
who
mean, yeah,
knows?
he's literally waking up from a wrecked
Yeah,
ship. He sees something, he's going to start firing. I mean,
yeah. And
yep.
then so to get back to the adult tone, and you spoke about this in our Last Jedi video that a lot of people did not agree with. But you want to talk about gray area and morality and stuff like that and blurring the lines. We see Cassian, accidentally kill someone and
Yep.
then has someone on their knees essentially begging for their life. Hey, I didn't see anything, like, hey, he slipped, blah, blah, and just executes him.
Yep.
We see him do this in the opening scene in Rogue One.
Yep.
Well, I guess the second opening scene in Rogue One.
I know what you mean. Yep.
Yeah, his scene. But it was interesting. He was like that right now. I figured he got battle hardened up to that point, but he was just like the the stakes are so high for him,
Mm-hmm.
right? That he had no choice. There's not a chance he could leave that guard alive.
Yeah.
He had to.
And I got blasted on our chat about that when it came to Ryan Johnson about how there's no such thing of the gray area, that it is very black and white. And it's interesting that this show comes out and not 5 minutes into it, he does something that is very unresistance.
Yeah, he did the more villainous thing theoretically.
100% he did.
We're here for Cassian, but and then the other thing I thought was interesting too is obviously the corporate security guy who's chasing him is a big tryhard. His boss basically just says, leave it alone. It's an accident. I have to report to the Empire today about any. Was it safety or security? Was it security issues? Anyways,
it was crime rate.
Yeah, he did not want that on the report, and Buddy just totally ignores him. So I can't wait to see the fallout with what's going to happen there, because he took a whole squad there and lost, over half of them.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean this guy's going to come back and obviously not be happy.
Yeah. So it's people say, when I hear slow burn, I think of it kind of in a negative thing. I think that's what people try to dress a boring show like. But for me, if I know you hated Blade Runner, for example, 2049, and I love it.
It's funny you say that, because Blade Runner has just been announced as a live action series, and which is going to be hosted by Prime. And I was on a group chat literally yesterday going, I need to give these another go, because it's such a huge movie of our generation, and I just don't think I've given it the time. So my first impressions of 2049 were a struggle, but maybe I didn't know it well enough. So I'll be going through that again.
Yeah. So other things I thought were interesting in this. So just little minor Easter egg. When he takes off in that ship from the first planet, it has Y-wing engines on it. It looks kind of weird.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
To me, again, people say there's no Easter eggs, and sure, there might be a proper name for this, but to me, in Star Wars EU, there was ships called Uglies, and what they were scavengers bolted on TIE fighter cockpits, on X-Wing wings. They just mishmash crap together. That to me looked like a version of an ugly shuttle. It was basically just a place where a couple people in storage could sit with Y-wing engines to propel it. Whether or not it was whether or not it was actually that or not, that's to me what it reminded me of. When the corporate security go out and try to capture them, they exit hyperspace in their big shuttle, and they launch their smaller shuttlecraft. Those look like modified versions of those lat. They're called lats, a low altitude.
Yeah, they do.
The gunships. You know what I mean? The gunships from Clone Wars.
Very much so. Literally a tiny version of those.
Yeah, they're obviously altered, but they're obviously Clone Wars-esque, which I thought, again, for people saying the show isn't dressed up with Star Wars things and no Easter eggs, I thought, I saw quite a bit that I, enjoyed and, like to see. We obviously get a new droid who was different and cool. And again, we get a little bit of Cassian's synergy with the droid, which he, eventually, hopefully we get K2SO down the road.
Yep. Yeah. I thought there was going to be one more Easter egg, and when the scene was over, I realized that I was mistaken. When he walks into the brothel at the beginning,
Yeah.
the hologram looked remarkably like the dancer from Jabba's lair. It wasn't upon second look, but when it first did, the way the figure moved, it was like, oh my goodness, is like I literally thought that was happening, but
Twi'leks are always dancers.
yeah,
In the
yeah. But I
Star
looked
Wars
back
world.
and it wasn't. But it was definitely close enough that it looked like a nod.
Yeah, for sure. What did you make of, his introduction into the rebellion? So essentially, he's like
I I
essentially like the
struggle.
guy.
I struggle on this one because I really I love the scene in the warehouse with all the engine pieces up there, and I adore the actor that plays the gentleman.
Skarsgård.
Yeah. However, every time I see him, all I can think about is Dr. Eric Selby from the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Oh,
And all I
yeah.
kept thinking in my head is he here looking for the Tesseract? What is happening here? But he's awesome. He's brilliant. And that's not a shot against the show or
Yeah.
him. It's more of a thing against me. I'm like, I can't see him other than being crazy, running around Stonehenge naked. Like,
Yeah, and I kind
yeah,
of liked it. It's like, I don't care about your Imperial stolen tech. Like the real reason I'm here is
yeah,
because of how you got that. Like
yep.
I'm recruiting people, and again, like similar, like there's probably gonna be a lot of similars to like the Rebel show. He's probably gonna get pulled into one of those early Rebel cells, which I think like that's what we want to see. I think that's going to be really, really interesting because we obviously know Mon Mothma eventually comes into play.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, next week's episode. Other things I thought were interesting and might be so. This one I don't know how I feel about. You and me actually did a whole video on fake swear words. Remember our frack versus dank
Dang
ferric
Ferric.
versus yeah.
Yep.
This show likes to drop real swear words. Does that take
Oh
you out of
yeah, it
this?
does.
They said bastard twice in this one.
Son of a bitch.
So does that take you out of it feeling like Star Wars at all, knowing that all previous Star Wars properties kind of used fake made up words for it to like fit in universe and now they're
No,
dropping real ones?
no, because it goes along with what you've been saying since we started this, which is this is for the grown up Star Wars person. This is for the person that started as a kid who maybe has had enough of dank ferric. I don't think you're going to see a ton of f bombs being dropped.
Yeah, I
But
doubt that. I think
I don't hate that the language has matured as well. I mean, you'd never that'd be like saying, are you morbidly offended that the series started in a brothel? Like, although
yeah.
tastefully done, that's really where it was. I will only be offended if they revert back.
Yeah. I guess I'm kind of indifferent on it. Like I'm fine with it. I think it's cool, but it's just it kind of there's that little part of me where it just kind of goes against all the other shows.
Yeah.
And how like again, they've always invented words for that kind of stuff. But it's definitely not enough to bother me at all. Like I think it's
Yeah.
hilarious that they're saying bastards
Mm-hmm.
in a Star Wars show. What else did I have? Anything stick out to you that was on the top of your mind? Did you like the how did you find the tension and the build up to basically his escape?
I I liked it, but to me, it really goes back to this Tim guy. He's the one character I was I was laughing. I was laughing with Stace when we were watching it because I was like, well, you know what they say, snitches get stitches. And sure enough, this guy rats
Yeah.
him out and then eats a rifle to the chest. Um, I mean, they had to advance the story. They had to get it moving. I don't know if I loved the Tim guy spying on this girl he's seeing. Like, come on, man.
Yeah, he kind of just had like the jealousy thing going on. Like he thought she was
Yeah,
involved with Cassian, but it really wasn't.
yeah. The action scene of his escape was great. I thought the action scene in the factory was fantastic. I thought it was well done. I love how his focus was on the piece of tech, and then the other guy reveals that he really doesn't care. Like, he's literally here for him. Even when he arrives and Bix is saying that they're coming, he's like, well, better work quickly then.
Yeah.
Like, he's clearly not there. I will say that my favorite part of the 3 episodes was definitely his description of him just being able to walk in there. They're so arrogant, so fat and satisfied, and they can't even imagine someone would come walking right into their house. I loved that. That was said with conviction. It was so good.
Yeah. And yeah, and like the whole thing, like how it's, I don't know if it was odd or not, but like you kind of got the feeling throughout it, like Cassian was a little bit of a loner on this planet, right? He had his couple contacts, but everyone seemed kind of reluctant to be associated with him because they knew he was up to like stuff.
Yeah.
But when
he's clearly a thief.
Yeah. And everyone's working. They thought that they kept thinking too. Everyone's working jobs, and
But
Cassian's doing dick
just
all.
doing dirt.
He's just walking around bugging people on their shift. So, which I thought was like, I don't know, how that planet works. It almost seems pretty rigid, where everyone has to be doing something, and for some reason, Cassian doesn't have to do shit.
Yeah, he's just doing whatever.
But it goes to when the corporate security comes, they do their little alarm system, right? Everyone's tapping on things and like button up shop.
That was almost so cool.
Yeah, it was cool and executed. But then the whole time I'm like, would they just do this anytime like people show up, or like were people actually interested, or like are they anti-corporation, right? And it doesn't matter what Cassian did; they're just against when they show up. I'm going to say they're
anti.
Thing.
Yeah, I think they're anti, and then it's such a small community when they harass. What's her name? Marv. Like, that is an absolute war cry, and her depiction through that, it's what happens when they stop, and they're both just standing like what happens? Just like
Did you know that the writer of the show, Tony Gilroy, was the one who wrote all the Bourne movies?
I did not know that.
Can you tell?
that does not surprise me at all.
Yeah, it has. I don't know. It's minus. We don't have. Well, he's not. I don't think he directed them. I think he just wrote. Maybe he directed the first one, but it doesn't have like. I know at the Bourne there was like the shaky cam as it got further and further. We definitely did like get that. Like let's actually talk about that. I think the show is shot gorgeously.
Agreed.
And you could, I'd like to say my eye can't notice the difference sometimes. Sometimes I think it's overblown between real sets and digital sets and stuff like that. But I think there definitely is a difference of visual feel between this and like the stuff filmed in the volume. Because this show is all on location versus
not only is it all on location, but there are times during some of the scenes where musically is being played live on location. There is a piece that was released on Disney about a week or so ago, and the guy who plays Cassian said it was the coolest feeling in the world because he's like, I'd be in a scene, and although you couldn't see them, the orchestra was literally there playing. He's like, it was the easiest way to get into something because obviously music does such a great job setting the feel and the tone. He's like, it was so easy to get into because they'd yell action, the music would be playing. He's like, you are in it. He's like, I got to experience what everyone else does. I thought that was an unbelievably cool touch. Imagine like fake community. The scene that's been put together, and then there's a guy up in the corner you can't see, like playing as this is happening. Like, what an unbelievable experience that would be.
Did you enjoy how it was scored? I feel like it sounded different, but it fit for what was going on.
Yeah, it's funny because you mentioned that it was written by the writer for Jason Bourne. Like, it felt a lot more like a Bourne series.
Yeah, it feels like a spy thriller, essentially.
Yes, you literally nailed it when you're like, does this feel like Star Wars? And I said, no, it feels like a spy thriller. And the words were eluding me, but that is a perfect description. It feels like a spy thriller that happens to be in the Star Wars universe. And for that, I love it.
Now, big, like, wide-spanning question for you. say this show ends up being extremely successful. Okay. Say it's like, you know, right next to Mandalorian or up there with
It won't be,
Mandalorian.
but it won't be, but okay.
But say it is.
Okay.
Will the decisions they made on this show, as far as, you know, real sets versus volume, more mature versus, you know, not, will that have any impact on future Star Wars properties and how they choose to do things?
It has
Because
to. It has to. I think obviously there's been a lot of scrutiny. We've all seen it. We've all been victim of it, as to how people think the Star Wars universe should flow. And if there's one point that we've never spoken to, I'm sure much smarter people than us have, is that Star Wars hasn't really grown up. It's always been, as you said, George Lucas said, it was supposed to be for children. And if you look back, the divide in people can really come down to the level of maturity of programming that they want to see. Think about that for a minute. Like,
well, it goes
Mandalorian
back to
was incredible, but it still has Baby Yoda.
Yeah.
Like, there's always been something. The prequels were the extreme. But
it goes to
sequels,
how,
right?
you know, like, did you ever watch How I Met Your Mother?
No.
So they do like a reasoning on whether or not you love Return of the Jedi or hate Return of the Jedi, and it's all based on Ewoks.
Mm-hmm.
And they I can't remember what it is, but they figure out there's an age and when you saw Return of the Jedi, the Ewoks, of whether or not you like it or not.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you were on the under half, you love Ewoks, but if you were the older half, you hated them at the time.
Yeah,
which is probably why you hated Jar Jar.
Maybe because I was already in my 20s, right?
Yeah. I can't.
But yeah, I mean, this property is really showing a grown-up Star Wars, from brothels to using real swear words. I think the Star Wars universe does have to age. And this could be a great step. Will it be alongside a Mandalorian? No. However, it wouldn't surprise me to see if the Mandalorian continues on this wrecking ball mission it's on, which I'm sure we both hope it does. I'm okay with it getting older. I'm okay with it using more mature language.
It's a good point, because like, look at the Clone Wars and Rebels, right? Like, those shows got darker.
I have two words for you: Harry Potter.
Yeah, same thing.
A series that evolved with the age of the audience.
Exactly. If you're a first-time watcher, say you watch Mando season 1 at age 10, 12, by the time you get to season 3, 4, you're now, 14, 15, 16, and now you can handle that stuff.
Yeah. It needs to age, and this is this I think is a really positive step forward. Yeah. I think that this will influence future properties in terms of answering your question.
Yeah, and they've pumped a lot of money and hype into the volume, and I get it. It's great for certain sets, but I can't help but feel there's got to be this like definite hybrid approach in the future, because watching Andor, in my mind, I kept just going back to Kenobi. I think Kenobi's the easiest thing to compare it to. And Andor, just every shot, every scene just looks so much better than Kenobi. And Kenobi was filmed primarily in the volume, right? Where Andor was like, like, just think about, like, I don't know, like the last duel with Darth Vader. You and me both loved it, but I think aesthetically, though, it was kind of boring and dull. Like, it was like really darkly lit rock pillars, and that was it. You know what I mean?
That's
like,
fair. Yeah,
it was, and I don't know. Again, like the scenery isn't the star of the show; it's your two leads, but like, it could have been more interesting to look at. Whereas I feel in Andor, like, every scene looks, it just,
even the end scene great. With them flying over the wastelands and all those different squares of stuff. It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks great.
Kenobi could have been the series that broke the language barrier. It didn't have to be Andor. Kenobi could have been that more grown up series, because all the Kenobi fans have grown up. Yeah. They're all. I don't
want to hark on Kenobi either, because generally
I enjoyed it very much.
But the other thing too is, like, Kenobi had a lot of silly moments, whereas I feel like this show, we're not gonna see any of those.
No,
Like characters act
you're gonna
smart.
see
Like
some droid humor, but
there's nothing dumb. Yeah, it's like very like we talked about. It's mature. It's not
yeah,
here for like gags for younger audiences, which
yeah.
is it's a different step. It's maybe a brave step for Disney, but
Hmm.
so far so good.
Like imagine them making a series on Vader. Just
Yeah,
throwing in a weird idea. You could make that dark. You could make that mature. You could
yeah,
make
it would
that
have to
grown
be.
up,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Unless they give him like a cute, cuddly sidekick.
Like a dark Pikachu or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, good. Let's give this a score. Let's give it a score for all 3 episodes
All
combined.
3.
This is like, your premiere movie into the world of
Yep.
Andor. You can go first. I am actually interested to know where you land. I have a feeling I feel like you're like, I don't know. I feel like you're kind of middle of the road on this.
I'm actually more the middle of the road. I'm a solid 8 here.
Solid 8.
I'm a
Yeah,
solid
so
8. And I'm a solid 8 because I think that they did an incredible job telling the story of Cassian without dragging it on the way that they did in the Book of Boba Fett. I thought the ending scene was really well done. It didn't have any of the dumb silliness. I didn't necessarily love the character Tim, who was Bix's boyfriend, the guy who sells
yeah.
him out. However, there had to be something to move the story along, so I totally get it. I'm a solid 8. I didn't leave it the same way I left the last episode of House of the Dragon, but it definitely was really well done. What about yourself?
Yeah, so we're going to be way different.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna go 8-8. I really enjoyed
That's your
myself.
highest. That's your highest ever score.
Keep in
Higher
mind,
than any Mandalorian.
we did not score the Mandalorian. We started doing the number scores post Mandalorian.
Oh,
So
did we?
we only done Bad Batch, Kenobi, and Book of Boba.
Okay, fair.
Yeah.
But even still, that is easily your highest.
So what my only caveat is I don't know what the rewatchability of it will be, because I watched Return of the Jedi a bajillion times because I love seeing Luke swing his lightsaber at Darth Vader and the giant space battle, all that stuff's going on. Like
Mhm.
that is timeless. I don't know where that show fits on it, but as far as like my enjoyment
Mhm.
watching it for the first time, like I was hooked. Like I
Yeah.
felt like again, people say slow burn. I felt that tension build throughout. I was on the edge of my seat. I thought the acting in this is probably some of the best acting and dialogue written for Star Wars.
I agree. Yeah, it was really well
Bar
done.
none. And like again, the cinematography, I thought everything was well done. I don't really have any complaints. Like I nitpicked out of maybe a couple minor things. Like I really had nothing. Like
Yeah.
again, like my only complaint would be, yeah, like give us a little more action. But like,
It's
we
gonna
talk
come.
about
It's gonna
yeah,
happen, right?
exactly. We talk about this in another show. We talk about, episodes need to, set the stage, character development. We talk a lot that there's filler episodes and stuff like that. Like I felt like
There is no
ma-
filler there.
yeah, I wouldn't call it filler. It was all character development and world
Yep.
building. And
Yep.
I was interested in what was going on.
Yep.
And I think it's going to build to something pretty special.
All right.
We'll see, but I was into it.
Yeah. No, I enjoyed it. There's no doubt.
Yeah. So next Wednesday we will see where they pick up. I'm hoping we get to see that his shuttle there with the double red laser spitting in the air. I hope that's next episode.
All right.
I'm assuming it is, and I probably will be even happier with with that one. So we'll see. Thank you for watching, everyone. In the comments, please let us know what you thought. Were you
Mhm.
bored stiff, or were you into this new type of Star Wars we got? Gad, any final words?
None other than I will see you Monday night when we no longer have a young Rhaenyra or Alicent.
Yeah, no more.
Confirmed.
What's her name? Alcock.
Amelia Alcock. That's right.
Too bad. Okay. Peace out, everybody.